Welcome to The Art of Growth and our series on empathy for the types. And today we are talking about the type 3. You can go to theartofgrowth.org to see all the stuff we've got going on, including our upcoming certification course, which is officially accredited through the International Enneagram Association. You can also sign up for our newsletter there or contact us about working with your team around optimizing team health. So I am Jim Zartman, and today my co-host Joel Hubbard and I will be talking about empathy for the Enneagram Type 3. So let's get into it.
So the Type 3, second in the heart triad, or what's sometimes called the center point, because they are the core right there in the middle of the 2 and the 4. And the Type 3 has this core driving, it's like an angst or an existential hole of, I don't know that I have worth. For whatever reason, it seems like everybody else, maybe around me, feels okay in this world, just being as they are. And I certainly don't. I have this sense that I have to earn something to get this thing that's outside of me. It's a sense of value. Like, I have no value as a person.
Unless.
Yeah.
And then fill in that blank, because this is where some of the literature gets a little too specific to what that means to a Type 3, but that's going to come in a lot of different forms. But the essence of that is, I have no value unless, and then fill in the blank of what I need to goal, I need to do, an achievement I need to make, a position I need to have with individuals or a group or work. Like, there's a lot of different ways that can, names that they can put on it, because it does show up actually in multiple realms of life, not just in one, but is, I have value if I do X, if I can accomplish X.
And it's a means to the end. It's, if I do all of this, whatever it is, as you mentioned, because it is quite broad. For some, it's more of the sense of competency. Like, you see me as a competent person, capable person, like I'm accomplishing these things. And, others, it's more of a driving towards, achievement, lots of achievements, and being able to tick those off and say, look at how much I've done, and for others, it is very much about the goalposts. Like, I've gotten the ball across, the goal line. I've scored. I keep winning, and that sort of thing. But it's a means to an end. It's a means to getting that sense that the worth that is outside of me, that you somehow possess, the people that I admire, the people that I look up to, they have the power to give this to me or to withhold it from me. And so if my worth is only based upon, did I hit my quota? That is the feeling. I've heard some of them say, it feels to me like every day I'm applying for a job. Every day I'm in the interview room and I have to perform. Because otherwise, I'm back to zero every day. That sense of worth is not something that I can feel internally or create. I can only get it when I have done certain things to impress you, to make you like me, to make you think I'm amazing, to make you think I'm exceptional, that I'm capable. And then you'll give it to me. And then maybe I'll have that sense of worth.
At least for a moment.
For a moment, yeah.
And I think this is where it really kicks in with the empathy for me, is that the feeling doesn't go away even after that desire is met.
Yeah.
It just starts over. And if this is not something you can imagine, try to imagine for a moment putting all of your energy, your effort, everything in your toolbox to hitting some kind of a goal, getting some kind of a feedback, winning some kind of a trophy, like whatever you've been pursuing, it happens. And then immediately the fulfillment of that goes away. And it's like, oh, well, what am I going to have to do next to have value? And so the sense of having value is permanently temporary. No matter what, it's always got to come up again. And so, okay, I'm already thinking about what the next thing is and what strategies I'm going to need to be and how charming I'm going to have to be and what kinds of conversations and connections I'm going to need to make that happen. And what skill sets I'm going to need to acquire to show up in that space. And so there's this constant calibration of what I'm going to need to do next in order to have value again, which will then disappear.
Yeah.
And so that cycle, the pain of that cycle, of that ongoing thing, which until threes really wake up to self-awareness of it, they wouldn't even call it pain. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't even notice that this was a cycle that they were going through. Nor would they admit it, because until someone has really done some deep work, that's going to make them look like the very thing they don't want to appear to you as being. Mm. But if they let you in on that, that's a pretty sacred space.
Mm. Yeah. I think of the day that I left my job. I knew I was going to be let go of, so it was a long period of time between when I got the word that they were going to be letting me go to me actually leaving this job. But this job had become everything to me. I'd poured my whole life into it, my whole heart into it. I loved it. I was doing very well at it. And then I started burning out on it. I wasn't really passionate anymore. And that's when my boss noticed that and said, it's time for you to move on. But when I left my job. And, for those of you who work full-time jobs that you actually like, and you put your whole life into it, you work hard at becoming good at it, because everybody wants to do a good job for the most part. I think if you enjoy what you're doing, you want to do a good job. And so you're working hard. You then end up leaving all of that. And that moment when I left, I remember the feeling of, it took a few days to really hit. I felt like a nobody. I felt like I had lost my identity. It was like, who am I if I'm not this role, And it's an awful feeling of just not knowing where you stand in the world. Like, there's an orientation I think you get to getting good at things, to getting competent at things. I've heard of folks who've had severe injuries that have meant that they can no longer play the instrument or play the sport they once did.
Yeah.
And that sense of identity, rocks them deeply. Like, who am I if I'm not this?
For sure.
And that really gave me a vivid sense. It was funny because it was a relative of mine who is a type 3 who said to me on the, one day, and I was still hurting, but I wasn't showing it. And she goes, "Oh, how you doing?" I was like, I'm okay. And she goes, "Yeah, you went from being a hero to a zero overnight, huh?" Mm. And I thought, ouch. Yeah, that hurts. And she could completely identify. And I was like, that is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I can reflect back. I didn't know the Enneagram at the time, but I can reflect back and go, I can relate to that feeling of loss of identity, not knowing who you are, and feel like you have to start all over again in a different industry, which is what I did, to then start from ground zero, to be a nobody, to have no competency, no capability, inadequate, all of those things showing up and starting all over. For me, I can relate to that part of the 3, right?
Yeah. There's a bit of that 3 in all of us where we may have done it for different reasons, but we acquired, it may have been a skill, it may have been a different kind of a competency, it may have been a position, whatever it is, the pursuit of a thing is because it says something about who I am.
Yeah.
I remember one of the reasons I picked up the guitar was because I was terrible at sports and I knew I was not going to get dates in high school from athletics. So it was like, okay, so you go, where can I find something I'm good at? And we do it for a lot of different reasons. Yes, it's because of passion. Yes, it's because it's something we like. But there's always that aspect of us, that little 3 within all of us that says, because if you pursue this competency or this charm or this capacity or whatever it is, it will mean fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And, that could show up differently for lots of different types. It'll mean I have more security. It'll mean I'll have more position. It means I have these connections. It means that I'll meet my own standards. Whatever it is, there is a if-then that they deal with. But for the 3, it's so much tied to identity. And if I can't, then I don't know who I am, what I am, if I have value. It's like so many of these questions around identity, which are so fundamental because we talk about, identity, community, belonging, and purpose. Like this is flow of life. We develop an identity, we develop a community, and there's an overflow into a purpose of our lives. And it can take them right back to that ground 1 where it almost feel like a kid. I don't know I don't know who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen threes struggle with that, where they almost feel like they're a kid again when something falls apart that they wanted to have a competency around.
Mm-hmm.
They're so adaptable at bringing it back around and like then finding something else or learning a new skill. I've seen so many threes do this where they had the kind of story you described where you're like, I was good at something, I had this thing, and then all of a sudden there was this fading of it away, and then they developed a whole other skill set. And I've seen them say things like, well, I wish I just knew what my like one thing is that I could give my life to. And I'm like, well, that could be a trap for you, because one of your amazing gifts is your adaptability, that you can develop a wide range of things that you could be passionate about. And it may not be just the one thing for you, which is the thing that I've seen a lot of people get trapped in. And so the way out is to like embrace that adaptability. That you should know deep down, and I think threes do know this deep down, that deep down, if something doesn't work, I'm going to be able to figure out a new way. I had a three like who I watched go through that whole process, and he's like, I always bet on myself. And I was like, dang right, for good reason.
Yeah. I've a client who said to me, if I fail at this startup, I always have this narrative, I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be on the streets. And then she would say, but I will be the best at it. I will have some kind of system I will organize where we will have food distribution. We will figure it out. And I'll be the most successful homeless person, on the streets. And I thought, that's right, because it's that adaptability. It's that flexibility. It's that I expect, for a three, it's like I expect that I'm going to be met with obstacles. I expect that things will be difficult. I don't expect that things will be easy, that they'll come, just things will come my way. And because of that, I'm prepared for that, But it is something that all of us can experience, I think, to some degree, is that sense of every day I feel like I have to show up and perform and do in order to get something, It's this drive I need to feel like I have meaning, like I have value, that you see me as valuable. And it may not be every day for a lot of people. But here's what I'd also say to threes is there are many threes who do not want to admit that they do have a need to get feedback. And that is also what prevents them, I think, from accessing or from making themselves open to receiving, empathy and validation, approval, affirmation, from other people. Of course, there's a wide range of threes. Again, there's some who will do a lot of name dropping, a lot of, showboating. They will do those things to get that feedback. Yeah. And others go the opposite direction. They will not say much about themselves, and they'll try to keep it sort of like, I shouldn't have this desire, so I'm going to present that I'm really a person that's humble, to the world around me. Because again, it's the presentation for the three, the presentation of the self, and this is the right presentation. Yeah. And so they sometimes block themselves from saying, you know what, in fact, I need feedback. I need to know how I'm doing. Yeah. And well, if I say that, then it's not real because I've asked for it. Well, again, it's easy to see it that way. I get that. But we have to sort of step out of that romanticized view of the world and to look at it as there are people who won't see that. I've heard from other types who say, you know what, the greatest affirmation for me is when my boss gives me more work. Because that means that my boss trusts me.
They trust me with more.
Right? Yeah. It's like I see that. And, I don't need you to tell me how wonderful I am. I just need you to trust me with the work you give me, tell me where I can improve and that sort of thing. I think that's the reason why a lot of people won't see that's what you need as a three, you need, affirmation. But if a three says, check in, I just want to check in, see how I'm doing. And what do you think I'm doing well? Rather than sneaking in and go, what do you think I could improve? Because that's the right question I should be asking. But it's like,
start with the well.
Start with what do you think I'm doing well? Yeah. And for a lot of people, it'll be like, I'm glad to give you that. I'm glad to point out the things that you're doing well. And so I think that helps to open that two-way street. Again, empathy is a two-way street, meaning that you have to be open to empathy by putting a little bit of your vulnerability out there, your need. And then I think for other types who are in relationships with 3, it is to like tune into that feeling of, oh, I know what it's like to lose a job. Yeah. I know what it's like to lose my sense of identity. I know what it's like to try and fail at things over and over again. I know what that feeling of failure feels like inside me.
Yeah.
It hurts. It's not fun at all.
And imagine being on the edge of that feeling all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Could you get inside and have a little empathy for that?
Yeah.
Because you were mentioning a second ago, the coming across in a certain way or name dropping or like trying to sound important. And I've seen 3s get really judged for that, or people make comments about them being egotistical or, pick a word in that category. And what I see is that this person's trying to be important. They're trying to feel like they have value, and they're trying to look for that affirmation that they have value. So if you have a little compassion for it, just be like, man, that's great. I love that. That's great for you. Anyway, and like moving on to the next thing. But still, sometimes I get frustrated at how each of the types get judged. That's probably that part of me that goes, well, I'll have a little compassion, because imagine always being at the edge of that feeling. And at the same time, I've had, 3s that I've coached talk about how they wish they didn't care what so many people thought of them.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I didn't care what everyone thought of me. And this coaching piece comes up a lot, where whenever I hear one of the heart types say, like, I wish I could be more like this type over here and not care what anyone thought of me. I was like, have you ever met someone who doesn't care what anyone thinks of them? That's a sociopath. Like, it's good to have some sense of care about what people think of you. And it's not that you are excluding the external voice. That is not health. It is the inclusion of your own voice, where you pull away and say, well, what did I think? Is there something in that I feel like I can be proud of? It's not about not caring what other people think. It's about also trying to more equally weight your own values in how you believe you should show up in this space. That's a good thing. And you can say, I can be proud of myself for this. Can you take a moment to write in your journal, to look in the mirror and be like, but I'm proud of the way you showed up in this moment today. Even if no one else saw it, if it was a goal for you, if it was something that mattered to you, if it reflected your values in some way, can you take a moment and look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm proud of you for responding this way or reacting this way, or for not telling that story that you wanted to tell in that moment, because it may have fed the beast that you just don't want to feel at this moment because you wanted to let that go. Great.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening, and thank you to our type 3s out there. And I want to remind you that you are part of the value that you add to the world. If you're new here, make sure you are subscribed, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Art of Growth and find out about all the stuff we do at theartofgrowth.org. But for now, my friends, may you engage a bit more of the 3 energy within you and tune into what will make you feel proud of yourself when you imagine a goal you'd like to reach and you pursue it. May you lean into the energy of accomplishment, never forgetting the energy of identity that is beyond anything you could ever accomplish. Know that fundamentally you have value, you are worthy and loved. Grace and growth, my friends.